This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So what we were talking about yesterday, and guys, if you're not speaking, please go on mute. Yes. So what we were talking about yesterday is that we were looking at a tool called Visual Studio, and using the Visual Studio, I said that I can firstly write a high-level language like .NET, and writing this high-level language, I was able to do a process called as a build. So I'm saying build. So I'm just converting. If I'm saying build, I'm just converting the code from a high level language, which is human readable, to a binary language, which is machine readable. This is what I'm trying to do, or this is what I'm trying to achieve using something called as a Visual Studio out here. So this is called a process of build. And after that, I did a publish. So what I did a publish. So when I do a publish, all I'm doing is that the code that got converted into binary language above in the first step is being deployed on a web application that's running on Azure. So this is what we did. So we had our laptop, we had a local machine, and in our local machine we had something called Visual Studio installed. Let me see. We have any pictures? Yes. So we had Visual Studio installed on our local machine, and using this Visual Studio, I am firstly doing a build of my code. Firstly, I'm building my code, and after building my code, the code is getting converted into something known as binary format, meaning a system understandable format. And I am just taking all the binaries that got generated, and I am just deploying it on a application that is, let's say, running on Azure. So I have an application, I just took all these things and I deployed it there. That's it. This is what I am doing out here right now. So is this process clear, guys? Is this process okay? Any questions here? Does anyone have any questions with this process? Anyone, anything before we move ahead? Yes, does anyone have any questions? Okay. So this is what we are trying to achieve right now. And yesterday we did write a code called first application. So I'm just opening up that code and let's see if I have a Azure web app that is running out here. Okay, so I do not have any app services. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and create an app service for myself. Okay, so let's just go ahead and create this out. Let's say demo RV running in, let's say, Central US. And once the resource group is created, I'll just go ahead and create an app service that is running out of Central US out here. So again, the creation of an app service is a rather more a simpler process than when you compare to creating a virtual machine. All you need is a unique name. So I'm just giving a unique name to it, and I'm just saying that this is an ASP.NET code. Then I'm saying this is, or rather, we are building our code in a language called .NET Core 3.1. So I'll just take this out. And now I'm selecting a region called Central US, and now there is something called as an abscess plan. So I'll say this is plan demo, and I'll just go ahead and say deployment, disable this out, and monitoring and also disable this out. Tags, review, and create this out. So I'm just going ahead and creating my application. So my infrastructure is getting ready, and right now I want to do a deployment from my local machine using Visual Studio. So using a build process, then using a publish process to take this to, let's say, an Azure Web App running in Central US. This is what I want to do, and this is where we are. We said this is my test application and etc. So I have just written a code, a very simple code. I just went in. I just went into something known as pages, and I just came down to something called index.cshtml page. This is where we are right now, and we said this is a sample application test. So let's say I just remove this out, and I say this is the version 1 of my application. So let's imagine this. Now we are working for a company, and let's say the company wants to develop an application like Ola, which will help people book their cabs and etc. And this is all the code. So I'm just assuming that this is all my code out here. And this is, let's say, your app name, which is version 1. So your application right now that you are developing here is called version 1. So what you do is that you as a developer or the developer in your team worked on all this application, meaning version 1 there were a lot of changes, not only this file but there were multiple files that got changed. So they said, okay, fine, this is working fine in local. How do they test it out on local machine? Now this is my local machine that you're seeing right now. And before I take this code to the cloud, there should be some kind of a test that I do on my laptop. So to understand whether the code is running or not. So for that, there is a button called IIS Express out here. So all we do, or all the developers do, is just click on this button, see if the code is actually running or not. So it'll first try to do a build process. Then it'll try to load this code on your local machine to see whether it's working or not. So this is what we do. So right now, my browser will get open, like a Google Chrome browser will get open, and it'll just tell whether the application is actually running or not. So this is what we start to do. So we test it out on the local machine. So right now, if you see, the website is called HTTPS localhost 44345. So it's running on a port called 44345 on my local machine. So this is my local machine and it's running on this particular port. And let's give it a minute and let's see how it looks like. So all we need to see is just that this is the version 1 of our application and etc. So right now, if you'll see, it's telling welcome and it's saying this is version 1 of my application. It's just telling that okay, fine, the version 1 is running. So now the developer is certifying that this is running in the local, this is okay in the local machine. So let me go ahead and close this out and let me come back to my original screen, and I'll just click here and I'll just say publish. And once I hit on the publish button out here, let me go ahead, open up a new publishing profile, and let me go ahead and target my application. So I'm just doing Azure, and I'm saying this is an Azure App Service running on Windows. And I'm saying next, and I am just selecting, let's say, the resource group in which my application is in. So it says demo first application, which is great. I'm just running this out. And finally, I'll say publish. So let me do one more thing here. I'll just click on this button called Edit Publishing Profile, and I'll say remove additional files at the destination, save this out, and then publish this out. So all I'm right now doing is I built my code. The build is started, the build finished, it is successful. Code is converted into binary, and now the code is being taken, and now the code is just being deployed onto an application or onto an application service that is running on Azure. This is what we are doing right now. So we have Azure portal, we have tested it on our local machine. Now we are just taking the entire application and deploying it onto Azure. So let's try doing that. It'll take like about a minute or so. Any questions still here, guys, on what is the procedure and what are we following out here? Any questions still here? Anyone? Any questions still here? Okay, so let's observe the process then. So the build started, it said the publishing also started, and now it's just taking or it's just converting all my files into DL. It just converted it, and it's adding all the files into the demo application, into the demo first application, into something known as www root. So it's going into the root directory, it's adding the application, and it says publish is successful, and it's telling installing something called as an extension. Then important thing, it's restarting my application. So whenever you have a deployment, the first thing that happens is that your application gets restarted so that it can show your code, or it can, let's say, show the reflected code out here. So right now it's telling this is version 1 of my application. I am good right now. So people are able to book cabs, people are able to, let's say, order things and etc. From my particular website out here, which is working fine. But as a development team, I just don't want to limit myself to just the version 1 of my application. I just don't want to stop myself there. I rather want to go ahead and work on the next version of my application. So as a development team, I now come down and say, okay, fine, I'll work on version 2. And I want to include features like if people are able to do cab booking, great. They should also be able to basically order food. They should also be basically able to book flights. So I am adding additional features out here to my application. So the first version of my application only contained one particular feature to book cab. Second version of my application right now, I'm saying, okay, fine, the second version of my application needs to have all these features and extra. So the developer starts working, and the developer will take somewhere around 2 to 3 months again in order to work on the entire code. And finally, they just go here and say version 2. So just imagine that the developer has taken like about good amount of time, 4 or 5 months of time, in order to work on all these features that were asked. The features were tested locally, it is working fine, and the developer is satisfied. So I, as a DevOps engineer, go here, hit this button called publish. Again, I have the same profile, so I'll just go ahead and publish it out. I'm targeting the same application. Now it's trying to again build the application, understand there is a change. It understands that there is a change. So it's trying to build the application once again. It's trying to again do the release process. So I am doing a build and a release process. The build process is nothing but converting the code into a binary language, also known as DLLs. And the release process is nothing but taking the code, which is converted into binaries, and releasing onto, let's say, an application server that is running on Azure. So right now it's telling the publish was successful and etc. And it also went ahead and restarted my web application. Now I have version 2 of my code. Now there is one issue right now. Version 2 got released, and I thought everything was working fine. Now, this is my statement, is that I thought everything was working fine, but apparently not. There are a lot of issues that are coming when I released version 2. There are a lot of users were complaining that there is a lot of issues with the application itself. They are not able to even book cabs right now. And I've included a lot of features, but none of them is actually working properly. So none of the features are actually kind of working properly out here. And now I say that, you know what, every time the application is not working properly, I have a loss of money because my business is not running. So we went to version 2 and we said, okay, fine, version 2, the code is like good. We tested it locally and we have taken the code to web app that is running in Azure. This is what we did. Now, after doing this, what's happening right now is that a lot of users are facing issues even with booking cabs. So each and every minute, I'm losing some users out here. So I'm losing essentially business. I'm losing a lot of money. So what I tell my developer is that, you know what, I don't want this code. This is not working fine. Maybe you haven't developed it properly. I want to go back to version 1 because right now people are not able to even not able to use version 2. Version 1 was really good. So let's do a rollback. I'm talking about a rollback right now. What do you mean by rollback? In very simple term, rollback is nothing but downgrade. So the client now wants me to go ahead and do a downgrade from version 1, sorry, from version 2 to version 1. Because version 1 was naturally working fine, so that did not have any issues. So I wanted to go back, or the client wants me to go back into version 1 right now. But where is that code? Where did I save it? Do I have version 1 anywhere? So this is a question for you guys. So do you all understand the problem what I'm facing right now? Anyone, what's the idea here? What should I do to get the version 1 back? Anyone, guys? Any inputs from your end?
So did you saved any where the version, the repo,
No, I did not save it. So I'm
document?
not into the DevOps practice right now. So I did not save the version 1 anywhere. So I was just, converting the entire code, thinking that it will work fine. So I do not have a copy of it. Like a hypothetical scenario, because that's what I did right now, right? Because if I have to take my code to version 1 again, I have to come down here, convert it into version 1. But the developer will actually take more time to in order to do this because there are a lot of features he needs to revert back and he needs to make sure that the code what was going into version 1 is the same code what I again roll back. This is now, let's say, a big issue that I'm facing right now. So any ideas here, guys? Anyone, anything?
We might have saved some, I mean, it has already saved some logs, previous
Mm-hmm.
log backlogs. So
Okay.
we can consider those logs and then.
Okay, so that's true. We can consider those logs, but again, if I want to consider those logs and go back to the version 1, I will still take like about at least a month, right? I need at least a month here because there are a lot of features that I need to roll back. So there is at least a month of time that I'm actually looking at out here. So let's understand a couple of issues out here. Now, what's happening with this process? What are the drawbacks, or what is the biggest drawback of this process? Is that firstly, I'll say this is testing. So when I'm developing the code, or rather when the developer is developing the code, the testing is happening on the local machine where I build the code, and I'm certifying that the code is good. But the result of it is that the test that happens in the local machine is not, let's say, a quality gate. Local machine does not simulate your real-time environment. The real-time environment that's running on the cloud. Local machine does not do this. Two is that I do not have a copy of my older code, of my older code. And so what I'm doing is that I have to revert back. This will take a lot of time, and it will basically cost me a lot of money, and it will tend to lose my I will tend to lose my business. The third issue that is happening out here. So this is issue one, where in the testing, let's address each and everything, one at a time. This is issue two. I don't have an old copy of my code. This is issue three. What's issue three is that whenever I'm doing a version upgrade or a downgrade, my application is getting restarted, meaning I have a downtime. Now it's a very simple application. This is taking about a minute to restart. Now, what if it is a complex application? What if it is, let's say, a very complicated code out there that I have written? It might take somewhere around 5 to 6 minutes to restart to get the application back up running and etc. But companies usually do not enjoy the luxury of time. They do not have or they cannot afford downtime, because each and every time I'm saying there's a downtime, I am telling the customer to not use the application at that point in time. So cannot afford downtime out here. And if the application is global, meaning if the application is being used all across the world, it makes it more complicated, like Facebook, wherein you don't see Facebook to be down, right? Even if Facebook is down for a minute or two, there's a lot of fuss that is going around telling that what, Facebook is down and all that stuff. So in order to approach this, I am first saying that the first problem is testing in the cloud is or testing in the local machine is not the same in the cloud. So can I test my application on the cloud itself? On the cloud. So this is the first solution that I'm asking, is that if this is not the ideal way, then can I test my application on the cloud? Somehow I want to take my application to the cloud. I want to test there. Then I do not have a copy of my old code. So can I store a copy not in the local machine? Because if I save the copy in the local machine, there might be issues, right? Because my laptop can crash. I may leave the organization and my code entirely I can take my entire code with me. So can I store a copy of the code somewhere accessible or somewhere everyone can access? In the version upgrades, as I'm facebook.com right now, I cannot afford downtime. So can I achieve a zero downtime deployment? Now, these are the questions that I kind of ask, and the answer is something, or the answer is called, or the concept is called a deployment slots. Deployment slot. We come into a concept, or we rather get into a concept called deployment slot out here. Now, what exactly is deployment slot? Is that this is a very unique feature which helps us achieve all these things. How does it help us achieve all these things out? Let's understand it. Let's technically see what deployment slot is, and let's do a demo on that. So I'm going into my application, and in my application, I have something called as a deployment slot out here. There are, basically multiple options, and one of the options is something known as a deployment slot. So I'll go into the deployment slots, and right now when I hit the deployment slot, it's just telling me that it's giving me this particular message telling that The deployment slot is not a supported option, unfortunately, because the plan you're using is the free tier plan. It's a free plan that you're using, which doesn't really support a lot of features. So if you want to go ahead and use multiple features, please upgrade your plan. So I'm just clicking on the plan. I'm just going to something known as scale up. So I'm increasing the capacity, and I will choose a plan which supports deployment slots. How do I know that? I'm going to B1, and you have multiple features that are coming in, included features. I'm not looking at the hardware because hardware is something that I'm not really concerned about. I'm concerned about the features. It says custom domain, it says manual scale up to 3 times, etc. I still don't see something on slots. I'll go to S1, and this is what it now tells me. It tells you that you know what, you have something called as staging slots. This is something that I support, and I support up to 5 staging slots for testing and deployments before swapping them into production. This is great. So I'll just go ahead and select this particular plan called S1. S1 with somewhere around 5,000 rupees per month. I'm okay with this. I'll say apply. And the time it takes to change the plan, it's about less than a minute. It'll take like less than a minute not to go ahead and scale up your plan. So right now the plan has got scaled up. And right now, once you come back to your application, you are able to see that the plan demo, it is S1 and 1, meaning there is one instance of your application running in the backend. Now what I'll do here is I'll go here into something known as deployment slots. And as of now, I only have one slot called production, meaning whatever that you're deploying is directly going into the live application. So I don't want to do this. I'll just go ahead and say add a slot. And I'll say this is something like testing slot. And as and when I do that, it's telling demo first application hyphen test slot dot azure websites dot net. So I'll say add. So as I'm testing this out, I'm just telling this is a test slot out here. And as and when I hit the test slot, I'm just saying add. This will take somewhere around a minute or two in order to go ahead and add this slot out. And let's see what I'll do after adding the slot. So the developer has worked again, like the version 1 is now back. So what I'll do right now, the version 2 is running right now, so I'll let it run, imagining that the version 2 is performing okay, it's doing okay, or let's roll this back out. So first let me go ahead, say publish, and I want to publish the version 1 of my application right now, and I just say publish, so it's going ahead and publishing this out. So the developer has worked very hard for the last 3 months, and he's getting back the version 1 because version 2 is not working the way we anticipated to work. So let's wait for a second to the application to get deployed, and let's see how it looks like after the deployment. So after the deployment, this version 2 should just say this is version 1. That's it. It should just say this is version 1 of my application. So let's wait for a second and let's allow the deployment to go in, and let's see what happens there. So now this is the version 1 of my application that's getting loaded. So every time I do a deployment, we will see this issue. You will have like a bit of lag, and I have something known as a version 1 right now. Now the company says, okay, fine, great, you have bought version 1, but correct, but we have to improve the version 2 and then release it. But this time we'll make a smarter approach. We'll try to test it beforehand. We'll try to do all the testing just beforehand before you go ahead and hit the production. This is the production or the live environment. So what I'll do is like I'll come down here, I'll say close, and I now have something known as a slot right now. So using this feature, the developer again fixes all the issues, changes the code to version 2, Now I'll hit this button. I'll say publish. And this time around, let me again create a new profile. So I'm just clicking on new here. I'm saying target is Azure. Great. It's Azure App Service running on Windows. Good. And now I'm trying to select the application that is there in my Azure portal. It's under the demo RG, and this is a demo application. And there is a drop down button just below it, or just beside it, sorry. If I just click this, I have something called as deployment slots right now. So I added it something known as a testing slot. And if I expand this, I have something called as a test slot out here. Now this is what I'm interested in. I'll select this test slot and I'll say this is the slot, or this is the application where I want to go ahead and do a deployment, and I'll say finish. Again, I'll just click on release and I'll say file publish options, remove additional files at the destination, save this out, and I'll say publish out. So now I am publishing my code, but this time around, I am not publishing the code directly into the production, but rather I'm using something known as a concept called as a slot, which is nothing but a copy of your application that is running in the cloud. So right now I am not targeting my main application. I am not doing this. I am rather targeting the slot that is running on Azure. And the slot has, or the slot basically now will have something called as version 2, because I have developed my version 2 code and I now want to take it to the slot that is running on Azure. And the main application, which is production, is still running on version 1. This is not disturbed. It's still running on something known as version 1 out here. Still not disturbed. Great. So let's go back into our Visual Studio. This will take like a minute or so. So let's allow this a minute and let's go ahead and deploy, or let's go ahead and release our code into something known as the testing slot out here. So finally it says that the publish was succeeded, and it says okay, fine, I'll restart the application. So let's allow it a minute to restart the application and let's understand this a bit technically. Allow me a quick minute. Now the application is restarted and you have something called as version 2 of my application, which is running out of something known as demo first application hyphen test slot, which is running from a slot. And this is the URL for you. You're not giving this URL to anyone. This is internally for you to test out. So you are on the cloud right now. You can test it. You can do all your test cases. You can run all these things out. And this is what my end user is using, or this is what the customers are right now using, which is called, this is version 1 of my application, which is great. So what I'll do right now is that I have tested the version 2 thoroughly. I am satisfied with this, and I'll go here and I'll say okay, fine, finally I'll take my version 2 to production, and I'll hit a button here called swap. I'll hit a button called swap and I'm saying the source. So source, target, anything can be, I mean, it can be interchangeable. So from the production, I want to take the code into the source, or meaning into the slot, and from the slot I want to take the code into the production. So the slot has something called version 2, the main application has version 1. So I'm trying to swap this out. That's the reason this feature is called as swap feature, wherein I'm swapping the code, wherein I'm making sure that the code that is there in the slot is pulled into the production, and the code that is there in the production is taken into the slot. So this is what I'm doing right now, and I'll say swap. It'll take a minute or so. I'll just go ahead and it'll swap the entire code out here. Now, what's going to happen is that even during the swap, or even when the swap is happening, your applications are not going down. This is happening very silently in the backend without impacting your actual application. Your actual application is still happy, it's still running the version 1. So this is okay. This is not being impacted, and this is happening in the background. So it might take somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes for this to happen. But in those 2 to 3 minutes, the application is not going down. The application is still up and running. So this is what I'm addressing right now. Testing is happening in the local machine. So I said, can I test it in the cloud? Now the answer is yes, you can do it using something known as deployment slots. I do not have a copy. Now I do in a location that is accessible in the slot. So the older code that you had is coming into the slot, and the new code that you have is going into something known as production. And it now says the successfully completed slot between something like this. Let's close this out. And this again, guys, is my main application. Doesn't have a hyphen testing slot. So now if I refresh this page, I have version 2 here, and this is my testing slot. And if I refresh this page, I will have, or I should have, something called version 1 here. So right now I have something known as version 1. So the swap was successful. I was able to take version 2, give it to production. I was able to take version 1 and give it to the slot. Now let's say I'm achieving all these three things right now. I'm able to achieve a zero downtime deployment because I am not directly deploying into the production and I'm not impacting the application in any ways. So I'm able to achieve something known as a zero downtime deployment. And just in case, if now my users are complaining that what, version 2 still has issues, we are still not able to perform a couple of things out. Now my client says that what, okay, fine, let's come back to version 1. It's okay. I just go here. I am not even going into my local machine. I'm not doing anything here. I'll just say swap again. This procedure is called a rollback, and I'll say swap. Once I hit this swap button, again, it's going to take about 2 to 3 minutes, not months. It's just going to take about minutes. Reason being, I have the version 1 in my slot. I don't have the version 1 in my local. I did not save it for some reason. And I have the version 1 in the slot and the version 2 in the production. So I'm trying to now achieve a rollback using the swap option. So I'm again trying to get version 1 into production. This is what I'm trying to do right now. So let's give it one moment.
What if what if we
Mhm.
have multiple test versions?
Oh,
Can we go
great
ahead and
questions.
then select it?
Yes, so if you have multiple test versions, what you can do out here is that you can have multiple slots. Meaning this is just not limited to 2 slots. You can have multiple slots out here. So I'll just come back to that in a second. So right now, if I did a rollback, and if I just refresh my screen, I have version 1 of my application, and in the testing slot I have version 2. So the question here was, what if I have multiple applications, or what if I have multiple versions of my applications, meaning I have version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or multiple test case scenarios out here. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4, so on and so forth. So you can have multiple slots out here, meaning I'm just not restricted to one slot. I can add multiple slots. So how many slots that I can add depends upon your plan. So let's go into our plan
5.
one quick. Yeah, that's right. So it's a 5. So you can maximum have up to a 5 slot because your plan says so. Your
Yes.
plan supports up to 5. So what I'll do again using this logic out here that the plan supports 5, I can go ahead and let's say add another slot out here telling that this is test slot version 2, test slot version 3, and etc. So I'll say this is test slot 2, add this out. I can also add a test slot 3, 4, 5. So I can maximum have up to 5 including the production. So I can go for test slot 2, 3, 4, and I have a test slot and I have a production slot. So in that way I can just make sure that I have multiple slots out here. So let's do a test slot 2 right now, and let's understand this right now. So right now my test slot 1, or sorry, my production has version 1. The slot 1, which is a testing slot, has a version 2. So this is slot 1. Let's put it slot 1. Now I am going ahead and creating another slot for version 3. This is called the slot 2, and I'm having the slot 2 out here. Will hold the code for version 3 right now. So it has we have created a slot 2. I'll go here. I'll just say this is not version 2, but this is version 3. Save it out. Again, just do a publish. I'll say new. Azure, next. Azure Web running on Windows, next. And I'll now select my third slot, or the second slot rather, for the version 3. And I'll now do a publish of the code out there. Again, just edit this release button. Just say file publish option, remove additional files to the destination, save this out, and publish this one. So I'm now taking another new version into the second slot. Now I have 3 different slots, meaning 3 different application services that are running here. And if you go into the resource group right now, and if you look at this, this is my main application. The type is called app service. And I have a test slot. I have a test slot 2. The type is called app service in bracket slots. So I have multiple slots that are there. So one question can be that, you know what, you are going ahead and creating one application, great. You're going ahead and creating multiple slots. Aren't you not charged for this? Answer is no, you are not. You are charged on the plan, not on the applications. Meaning, under one app service plan, you can have multiple applications that are actually running there. You are actually charged for this plan out here. So this is the underlying virtual machine for which you are actually charged, but you are not charged for the main application that is actually running. So applications are not charged. It's just the plan which is charged. So I can have multiple slots.
So if we go beyond 5 slots, then it will be chargeable, right?
I mean, firstly, if you go beyond 5 slots, this plan won't even support. So the plan supports a
Okay, so we'll
maximum.
have to change the plan.
You have to upgrade your plan. So whenever you upgrade your plan from, let's say, okay, come back here, from S1 to, let's say, another version, which is P1 V2, the cost is getting doubled. Meaning from here, if you go here, it's 10,518 rupees. So here you're being charged somewhere around 5,200 rupees. So it's almost double the charge. So if you want to go ahead for more slots out here, for example, this supports up to 20 slots. Now S1 was supporting just up to 5, right? This was supporting 4 times greater than S1. So if you kind of scale up yourself, then your slots can get increased. So it completely depends upon your use case scenario.
Okay, so in real environment, we
Mhm.
will again have to select the plan here, or is it the companies who will select it and then give us?
So it's the normally you'll have something known as the architecture team that is working in every company. The architecture team will tell you which plan that does your application, or should your application actually run. So we as DevOps engineers, we don't really decide this. So it's either your client or the architect team which will help you, or which will basically help you with this out. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I have the production here running on version 1. I have test slot 1 test slot 1 which is running version 2, test slot 3 which is running or test slot 2 which is running version 3. Now I can go ahead and I can say swap again, and now I can actually go ahead and select my source and the target. So the source right now is the test slot. I can say this test slot 2, target is the same. I'll say swap. So right now I am getting version 3 into my production, version 3 into my production, and I'm taking version 1 and I'm putting into, let's say, the test slot 2. So I can now play around with different versions of my applications, and again I can go up to a maximum of 5 depending upon the plan. This will kind of change. So this is the concept, and this is overall called as a zero downtime deployment. Like, how do you achieve a zero downtime deployment? We use a concept known as a slot out here in order to go ahead and do a zero downtime deployment as such. So this is the entire concept, or this is the entire idea of having multiple slot guys. So any questions that I can take? Anyone, anything? So is everyone able to follow this concept, guys? So please make sure to practice this out, because these are all something that you can easily forget. So please make sure to practice it out as much as you can, and please come up with a lot of doubts, because right now there are three or four more classes with Azure, and after that we are going into DevOps. So that will be altogether a bit different ball game out there. So please understand these concepts so that we can apply it in, let's say, in Azure DevOps as such. Okay, so are you good for today, guys? Any questions that I can take?
Yeah, good.
Okay, guys, so have a great weekend ahead, and we'll meet tomorrow at the same time and discuss more on this one. So let's see tomorrow. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.
Thanks, Kiran.